My name is Dave Clark.
And I'm Dusty Wells, and we are here. We love to tell the story.
We do love to tell the story. This is a very special podcast for us. It's Father's Day. And some of you who have been following us for a while, you remember that last year on Mother's Day, we interviewed our mothers. And that was
We sure did.
pretty special episode. This is Father's Day. We are going to approach it a little bit differently because both of our fathers are gone. We were both impacted by our fathers in a pretty unique way. And I thought it'd be good if we just maybe talk about that for a little bit. Is that all right, Dusty?
I love that because we both have different impressions of what a father was, and to each one of us, yours was different for you, and mine was different for me. So, but I think we ended up okay.
Well, jury's still out on you, but I think
yeah, I think so too. Probably.
You know what we did? We came from completely different relationships with our fathers, and as we talk about the influence that our fathers had on us, and just Father's Day, we just thinking it'd be fun, and we hope it is, but we don't know.
No.
I ask your kids some questions, and you ask the same questions of my kids, and we're just going to sprinkle those answers in periodically.
I'm a little bit nervous about this.
I'm a lot nervous.
When I saw the questions, I thought, "Oh, do I really?" Yeah, it was.
All right,
yeah.
so here's the first one. Here we go.
Hi, Dave. This is Sharia, Dusty's youngest daughter and favorite child. That's not a lie. You can ask him. He will tell you the same thing. A couple things about my daddy. Okay, one thing that he has always loved is Christmas time. So not only that it's Jesus's birth, but of course that's why we celebrate. That's what we do. He always made it the center in our home. But also just the joy that the holiday season brings, and the joy also that you get from gift giving. So that leads me to my next thing is just the love of giving to others. He is always one to give us treats and surprises on a whim, anytime. He'll just be like, "Hey, I'm gonna get you this," or
That's where it's. That must.
Hello?
Hello.
So sorry.
Okay.
But yes, he's just always one to give treats and surprises for no reason at all. Just surprising someone with a little happy, just, when they're down, or just on an everyday day. He's just always been so good at giving, and giving time also, like giving his time and attention and love. And that's just always brought us so much joy, is seeing how his heart grows from giving to others. Wow. Another thing that has always been special was special to me as a child. And then I've noticed, like, as my kids have grown up, something we always have done and always love to do is go to Papa's office. That was something I grew up doing, and now having my own kids, and as they've grown, it's just always been a really special treat for us all to go and visit Papa at his office. And he always wants to show us around. He likes to call it showing his family off, but just the joy it brings him to kind of let everybody know that he loves his family so much. We always love visiting him. Typically, we would try to sneak some product, or like have him give us the newest music or the newest hot toy or whatever it was that they were carrying. He was always like, "Ooh, I'll get you that. Ooh, I'll let you have this one. Ooh, I just got this as a demo and you can have it." And so we were always spoiled in that way. Again, that kind of goes back to the treats and surprises. He's just so giving, so generous. And anyways, we are just, he's the best, and we are the luckiest. And he's such a special, not only a special dad, but special to everybody, and just a very vibrant, positive, giving, very special dad. And I really am the luckiest.
I'd love, maybe why don't you just start by talking about what you remember about your dad, and what that relationship was like.
Yeah. Well, my mom, my parents were not Christians, and so the one remembrance that I remember of my dad was he left us when we were very young. He was probably 3 or 4, and he was out of the picture, and we never heard from him. Never heard from him at all. My mom got married several other times for that, and I had stepfathers, but my real father. The only thing that I really, from the time until I was about 12 or 13, I would always see a picture. I never saw a picture of my real father with me, but I would see a picture of my real father with my brother, who was my half brother. And that always made me feel really strange because there was nothing, but you grow up and you just don't think nothing about it.
Right.
So I never heard from him. My mother did the best she could. When I was 13 or 14, we finally did hear from my father. We never got child support. My mom never went after that. He was never a part of, she never talked about it. She just said he was a rodeo guy. He rode in rodeos. They had been married for several years. My sister and I both had the same father, but when we were around 12 or 13, he came back into our lives very briefly. He was passing through a town that we lived in, and he, out of the blue, called my mom and said, "I'd like to meet the kids." And so my sister and I got to meet him, and he was a part of our lives maybe for 6 months. He would write to us, and then he disappeared again. And I didn't hear from him until I was in my 40s. So, people will always say, they'll say, "Well, how did that make you feel?" I didn't have a relationship with him, so I didn't.
You didn't know what it
I
could
didn't
be.
know what it could have been. I just didn't know. I didn't know. And so I think through this episode tonight that we're going to talk about, it changed my life of how to become a father,
Right.
and how to do things a little bit differently. So
You said when you were in your 40s, you kind of came back in your life. How?
he wasn't in it for long. Levon and I went to Idaho to visit my mom, and him and his wife at that time, they were there, and they had come back and moved back in, and they were friends with my mom and her husband, and they were friends with my sister and her husband. And we tried to develop a relationship, but it seemed like he was very kind, very kind. He was nice. He was funny, but there was never that fatherly, I didn't feel anything, and I don't think he felt anything. I think he felt regrets. I think he felt sad, but he'd never reached out. I'd try to write to him. I'd try to call him, and I'd leave a message, but I just didn't hear anything from him. I didn't feel like he didn't like me. I felt like he just was so far gone into his own world. He was at that point, he would have been probably 70, and he just didn't have any interest in knowing who his son was or his kid. And I knew he had multiple other children that were the same way. I think at one point we counted 7 or 8 kids that were fathered by him, but my sister and I never met any of them till about 4 years ago. We met a half brother that we had that he had been involved with his mom. So
do you know where those others are? Do you know
no,
names? Or?
No, it's really funny. And some of this is going to be funny, and some of it I may cry, but, I'm named after my dad's horse, Dusty. My dad was a rodeo guy. He had all kinds of awards, and he's in the Fort Worth Rodeo Hall of Fame. He rode horses and bulls and everything. And my sister is named after his ex-girlfriend, my mom told us, which I thought was the funniest thing. But that's that life. That's that, world. And so as time went on, my sister found this out, that he had another son named Dusty, and he had another daughter named Gina, because he liked those names, which I think is pretty funny.
So there's another Dusty Wells. Good Lord, help us all.
You need to pray that he doesn't ever come forth. And there's another Gina Wells. And then he had there were several other kids. we had, like I said, we had a half brother that lives up in Chicago that my sister and I found out by accident through he somehow found us, and we went up, and my Levon and Gina and myself all went up and spent a weekend with him and his wife, and we still keep in touch, and it was absolutely incredible because he looked just like my dad, and me and my sister look a lot alike, and he looks just a lot like us. But he's an incredible man and family oriented. But he had always wanted to meet some of the people that were was part of his family.
So somewhere out there, there's some other people who don't know their story either.
No, not at all. And he was very. He was gone all the time. I mean, he left when we were very young. He was. I was thinking about this earlier. How I wanted to say this. The thing that people will say, well, do you feel bad about it? There's times you feel sad. You want a relationship with a dad. At least I always did. Luckily, the Lord brought along a lot of good people into my life, and especially after I got saved. But from everything that my mom had told me, his mom had left him with his dad when he was here, and his dad was such a hard worker. His dad was never there for him. So his grandmother raised him, but his dad was never there. So it's that pattern of, he was a product of his own environment, and I feel sorry for him that he never got to know my kids. It makes me feel sad. He passed away several years ago, and I didn't hear about it till several months later that he had passed away. So, yeah.
Wow. And you got to know, you said you might laugh, you might cry. I think I'm the one that is more apt to tears on it because I know what you missed.
Yeah, because you had a great father. And when I hear your stories, even with our guests that you've talked about, you said something earlier in a taping about your dad, and I just was blown away by it. And I see you getting emotional about your own dad and how much you miss him and how valuable he was to your life. So
he was, and I can't, you're not going to be around me much time at all, but what I talk about him, and he's been gone 9 years, and I literally do not have one regret. There were 3 girls and 1 boy in our family, so I was the only joy my parents had, obviously. But Dad wanted a boy, and they were young parents, and they didn't have a dime, and Dad and I, till the day he died, there was never one crossword. There was never one disagreement, and I don't take that lightly. And I've been blessed to have that same relationship with my son.
Hey, Dusty, I'm going to answer some questions about my father. And I'll start with naming 3 things that I would say about him. I would say that my dad is a determined, dream-chasing visionary. And he's one of the hardest working people there is. And those words are important to me and the ones I think of because just watching him never settle and always chase what he's passionate about taught me to always do the same thing too. I never felt like anything was too silly for me to pursue or anything was too out of reach because I watched my parents do the same thing and just pursue something even if it's not the most popular thing to do or even if it seems crazy, they pursued it if they believed in it. And that's what I would describe my dad as. And the most proud of him that I've ever been, I don't think it would be a specific event, but just getting to work with him, getting to work at the same company as him. I hear stories all the time, and people will tell me different things that he's done for them, and just the compassion that he's shown and the chances that he's given people. And I'd say that's what I'm most proud of. Is just he's been my example and my best friend for my whole life, and I'm just very proud to be his son. Um, and I'll give a little bonus. The worst outfit. He's a pretty smooth dresser, but whenever he gets ready to mow the lawn, he pulls out the jean shorts, and I'd say that's probably the worst that I can think of. The jorts are pretty bad. The jorts and the dad shoes, the combo is lethal. But I hope these work, and thank you.
I never had any disagreements with my dad because he was never around, but I always, somebody, or it may have been you in a question I looked at, how did that affect you as a father? Well, I really didn't know what a father was. I knew after I became a Christian, I started. I was with some friends and some men that really mentored me as far as teaching me how to wear cologne, how to put deodorant on. So I how to shave. Because I didn't know. I didn't have a father.
They did it well.
They did it well.
They didn't tell you where to stop.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But I did learn at a young age that I knew I did. And I've said this before, I did not want to go down the paths that I saw my family go down. And I've said that. I just saw the brokenness, the hurt. Good people. But I knew that their lives were really fractured. And I thought, I know that I want to be I want to be, not that you're better than them, but you just want better for yourself.
You want better for your kids.
I wanted better for my kids. And I remember when Levon, with our oldest daughter, Stephanie, was born, I can remember as she's 42, I can remember as clear as day. And I think about it quite often, is sitting in the hospital holding her and saying, Jesus, I want to be the best dad. I want to be the best dad for this child.
Hi, Dave. This is Stephanie, Dusty's oldest and favorite daughter.
Allison.
I would say Dad has always been fashion forward, but the thing we have always made fun of him for since I can remember is he's always tucked his t-shirts into his jeans. Which we do not think is the coolest. I am most proud of him when I watch him play with my kids and the way he interacts with them. They adore him more than anything, and he brings them so much joy, and us kids of his own. He's always brought so much joy to us, and we would wake up singing with him singing to us to get out of bed, all kinds of songs, you name it. He would wake up singing to us at the top of his lungs. And just as an adult now, it seriously brings me so much joy. And makes me so proud to have grown up in a house that was filled with song and joy. He's the best dad and an even better papa. Love you, Daddy.
And every child we had 4, and that's been my prayer. And even to this day, I feel like you like to feel this way. You feel like you have a good relationship with your kids. But I do. We text, and I know you do this with your kids too. You text daily. You have family text. I hear about some people who don't talk to their parents for weeks at a time. I can't imagine that because we're all the time talking.
Now, I will say that my dad grew up without a dad.
Yeah.
His dad was around, and all I really knew about my grandfather was, on my dad's side, was that he spent a lot of time on the streets, and he played piano in bars around our little hometown of Michigan.
That's
so
wow.
Even that, I feel like I was impacted indirectly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, with the music part of it all and everything, right? Yeah.
And I'm so grateful on another level that my dad, probably, if he could have had his dream job, he would have been a quartet bus driver. Loved Southern gospel music. And so we had a lot of the same interests.
Yeah, see, I love that.
Played guitar, played the same style.
Did your dad take you to your first concerts and everything?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I don't know how they could afford it, but there was a place in Detroit called Masonic Temple, which sounds a little off the evangelical, Main
but that's
Street.
where a lot of the big concerts
Lloyd
were.
O'Rell would book that.
Yeah,
we'd go and I'd sit and just think. I felt like from the time I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
And Dad had written, and yet he literally gave up his dreams of music so that mine can come true.
I love that, man. That's
And so to the day he died, he was just proud
yeah,
of
yeah,
whatever all four kids did.
Yeah,
But there was a special bond that he and I had that I feel like I have with my son as well.
yeah. You were living. He was living your dream.
Yeah.
I mean, you were living his dream. So yeah.
And even on the next generation, my son, who's a great guitar player, who plays in the worship team at First Baptist in Hendersonville, he never had played guitar until my dad passed. And he began to ask, I'd tell him about my dad, and I'd sit and play old Hank Williams songs. And so he just picked up a guitar and started playing. And I don't really remember him learning, so to speak, but the girls are the same way. They both play piano and play guitars. And it came from somewhere, but a lot of that is they honor the legacy on my side.
Yeah.
And then on my wife's side, they couldn't have been closer or more impacted by Cindy's father as well.
Which I love that. And my kids are the same way. I'm not a musical genius like you. I do like to sing. I do like to sing, but I'm not, I don't write, I don't play. But my kids, the thing that I feel is like I love the whole business side of it. I love the being an really, we've talked about this, but I'm such a outward. I just talk to I don't meet a stranger and everything. And three of my four kids are like that. Donovan is a little bit more quiet, but I love all four. What I love about all four of them, there's so many things. They have this incredible work ethic that I grew up with because my mom was such a hard worker. You did. And all four of my kids just have this incredible work ethic, but they never meet a stranger, especially Stephanie Sharia. They are, and I love that. I see that in them, that they all, and the boys, the same thing.
And we've talked about it before, how the irony is, you didn't have a dominant father figure in your life, and you became the extrovert. And I had one, and I'm just pretty content when I'm out by myself.
Which just blows my mind, because you're this incredible writer and communicator, but you are so cute.
I think the writer is a lot of times I'm watching and listening for things that other people don't hear. And as far as the communicator, maybe I've heard it done wrong enough times. So
that's probably really true. That is true, probably. No, I know that.
So I said I don't have any regrets. Even the day I lost my father, I'd been in the studio a week, and I told Cindy, "Hey, I'm just gonna go out and hang with him for the." I didn't know that was the last day, and we sat and talked, and one of the interesting stories that you have to laugh at sometimes, the way things happen. But I had a cousin, and she and her husband, they lived in East Tennessee, and he would come into Vanderbilt for some medical appointments, and they would spend the night with my parents. But he owned a little music store. So because mom and dad obviously wouldn't take any money for them staying there, he wanted to do something for my dad. So he bought some guitar strings, and they were elixirs, which are, any guitar player would tell you, those are more expensive, but they last longer. So the day my dad passed away, it was February 13th. I'd just gone out and I just talked. We sat and talked. And I picked up his guitar that was always sitting by his chair. And I said, "You got new strings on here." And he said, "Yeah." He said, so-and-so, the cousin had brought them. And I said, "Are these elixirs?" Knowing that wasn't the kind my dad would buy. He said, "Yeah." He told me if I put these on, they'd last the rest of my life.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
When we lost him that night, he went to bed and he said, told my mom they'd been married, right at close to 60 years, and said, "I know it's early, but happy Valentine's Day." And within 30 seconds, he was gone.
Oh my gosh.
And you know what? Wow. If he had lived another 30 years, those guitar strings would have been the last
the last ones he would have put
but
on
my
there.
cousin called back and apologized for saying that. I was like, no. It's
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So I'm careful what strings I put on my guitar.
Yeah, I would be too.
This is Allison, Dave's oldest and maybe favorite daughter. 3 things that I would say about my dad. The first thing I would say about my dad is that he never wastes a syllable, but that doesn't just apply to songwriting. That applies to conversations, advice, feedback, Instagram post. If he says something, he means it and he's thought about it. The second thing that I would say about my dad is that he needs very little excuse for a road trip or really a trip of any kind. I think he gets that from his dad. He is always willing to drive somewhere to go hear our friends sing or to watch a good football game or a baseball game. There's really nothing, if you throw the idea out there, he is always willing to hop in the car and go, maybe even to a fault. He's been known to plan some pretty elaborate road trip weekends so that we can do all the things in a very short amount of time. But that being said, we have a lot of good, or mostly good, family memories, hopping in the car and going places. You'll have to ask him about the trip we took to Pennsylvania in 48 hours, because that was a good weekend.
That's a great story.
The third thing that I would say about my dad is he's always the first to encourage people and think outside of what they would think for themselves. I have watched him mentor artists and songwriters and just our personal friends and me and my siblings. And he just is always, he always thinks you can do more than maybe you see for yourself. And that's an attribute that I really appreciate, especially as I've gotten older. When fear would tend to stop me a little bit more, he is not afraid of dreaming big and going for it. And I really respect and admire that.
I'm not one on Hallmark holidays.
Yeah,
It's hard for me to buy a store-bought card.
Yeah, I get it.
Because they just say things that are fit for everybody.
I love getting cards and I love sending cards, but it takes me hours to go to a store to pick out a card because of that same. I'd rather write my own. There's been times I've just written a letter and said, "Hey, this is better than a Hallmark card." Nothing against you, Hallmark, if you're listening.
And yet we come to a day when for the good or bad. Whoever created the holiday. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, right, it was a lady named Sonora Smart Dodd, D-O-D-D, which ironically was the last name of my father-in-law.
Oh, okay, that's crazy.
If I remember that correctly. Now, so you get to a day like that, and as close as my dad and I were, Father's Day is always going to be tough, and yet you celebrate that you get to be a father.
You're exactly right.
And this year will be a little tougher because we just lost my father-in-law.
Yeah. It is so strange, Father's Day. There were certain, after I got married and after I became a father, there was Father's Day, and it still does. It's not my favorite holiday. But I love that my kids always honor me. But I don't, because I see all the stuff, hearing about how great father. There again, I didn't have a bad father. I just didn't have one. So you wonder what. There's times I've wondered, what did I miss out? I didn't learn how to go fishing. I didn't learn how to shoot a gun. All that kind of stuff that we think that a father would teach somebody. But I just there's times I get sad about it, and but I love that my kids celebrate me. So
I said I had no regrets. What would you have asked your dad if you could have?
I would have loved to. I would have loved to have asked him. Because I did hear good stories about him at times from my mom, and then my sister got a little bit better acquainted with him because he lived there the last few years of his life in Idaho. There was things I would love to ask him. It was like what. Why wouldn't you want to hang out with your son, or why wouldn't you want to hang out with your grandkids? And what was it that kept you running all those years from state to state, to rodeo, where you didn't want to just be with family? Because I love family so much. I love friends so much. Things like that. I'd love to have asked him, what was it in your life that why you had a great, everything. His grandmother loved him and tried to shower him with lots of love and attention. But what was it in his life? And, and I can identify he didn't have Jesus in his life. So I do know that. I do know that. But I'd love to know just what other things were there in his life that kept him from, I can't imagine not being in contact with my children. I'm sure you can't either. I can't imagine that.
But you also can relate to, because you've known enough musicians, not that they choose family over.
No.
But they will go when the call comes.
You're right. And a lot of them are gone weeks at a time. And I do see that kind of stuff. Yeah, you see people who are just off there. And then I do hear from, and you do too, you hear from people who don't talk to their dads or their moms for months at a time, or their kids. I can't imagine that.
So, one of the things that we've talked a lot about at our house is how different you parent your oldest as toward your youngest. Now, the kids are quick to remind you about that too.
Always so quick, so quick.
Was that the case in your house?
Yes. In fact, I know we're going to answer some questions later. We're going to hear our kids answer. Yeah. Your oldest daughter was the first one to respond.
Of course.
And my oldest daughter was the first to respond to you. And I haven't heard my answer. You haven't heard yours. Yeah. But when I heard Allison answer something, I thought, that is Stephanie all over. That is that older child. Take control, be secure. It was pretty funny.
And then the second child is usually the wild card.
My second child is the wild card, and I'm kind of nervous about her answers. And so, anyway, but it's so funny. Our kids, they just, Dave, they just, I'm so proud of our kids. I know you are too. And it makes me daily, the older I get, I want to be a better father to them. When you hear
let's see what else we got in the dusty pile here.
When you hear your kids talk about that, you've done something wrong.
So 3 things about my dad. He's always had really good style and dressed nice. I guess that's where I got it from. That's cool. He just really needs to stop tucking them t-shirts to jeans.
I saw.
Most embarrassed he's made me. I think it was my 15th and my 16th birthday.
Yes.
He had the singer on stage singing happy birthday. I did not like that very much, so I went and hid in the bathroom. When he came to check on me, I may have had some choice words for him. He makes me proud all the time, though. He works really hard at his job, and he's always been such an awesome dad. Always took care of us, took care of the family. He's always super awesome. Always looked up to him. One of my best role models. Happy Father's Day. I love you, Dad.
I did not see that coming. We go over to Sharea's house, or we go down to Stephanie's and spend time with my grandkids. That's one of the best things.
Well, and I love your weekend. I love your posts during the week, but your weekend posts are always.
Well, I just know how valuable that time is, and especially with LaVon and her condition. And I love this. I haven't. Now my kids are going to hear this, but they'll every one of them, because we're in that stage where we're going to move closer to Sharea. All 4 of us said, y'all can come live with us. How many people tell your parents that?
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying we're going to do that, but that makes you feel so good.
In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I sent you a text Sunday that said, I know this is your family day, blah, blah, blah.
You did, blah, blah, blah. You sure did.
But I need to ask you a question.
You did.
Because I hate to interrupt that.
No, it's, I love what our weekends are like. It's,
So what's one thing you did different to your oldest parenting than you did to your youngest?
Our oldest, we were much more, I think it's your first child. I was a little bit more you didn't let them wander away out in the yard by themselves, or you didn't, we were really, I've always been, more so than I've always been a really paranoid parent about, Stephanie we'd put her to bed at certain times. We did take her to concerts all the time, but we were had really strong regiments of how we should.
Did you take more pictures?
Yeah. That Christian, I know if you listen to this, I'm so sorry, son. Our youngest one, he'll say, "Where's pictures of me?" And I'll say, "They're there somewhere," but they're not like physical pictures. It's on our phone. It's more, So you just. Yeah, there's definitely a different. What about you?
Well, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
we'd been married 12 years.
Yes,
we wanted a baby for 12 years. So when we finally got one, God blessed us with an angel, and you've heard the story, I think, about the For Him song for future generations, and it was written. My part was written about Allison, and she was born on the day in between her two granddads' birthdays, named after her two grandmothers. Wow. And it was the day that song went #1 in the country. So we felt like, okay, God's done something pretty special here, and if this is our only one. But I was sitting in a church in Hendersonville here, and a preacher was named David Shelton. He preached a sermon about Samuel, and as clearly as I've ever heard anything, and I'm not one who hears voices or has visions, but that night I felt like God was saying, "You're going to have a son."
Wow.
And you name him Samuel.
Wow.
And so when we found out we were pregnant again a few years later, it was like a blessing already. We never thought we'd get to have two. And we go to the ultrasound, it was a baby girl, and I'm still crying, and then a few years later, we're back there again, and they say it's a boy, and now I really lose it. Yeah. And the nurse, I remember saying, "Oh, he's got his boy," and I said, "No, I heard God."
Yes. I love that line. Oh, I love that line.
So Sam is, he's married now, and so I don't know that I did as much different but after waiting that long, I think that impacted. I never missed a field trip with any of them.
Which I love. Yeah.
I was the dad carrying the water cooler.
I did. I mean, that's in our careers, we're both so crazy busy. That is one thing I'm very proud of, that I went to every baseball game that I could. I mean, you miss a few here and there, but even now with the grandkids, I go to as much as I can. Just evening times, I may be tired, but I just think that's so important. I wanted my kids to see that. I wanted our boys.
How long were y'all married before your first?
We were married almost 2 years, so it was pretty fast. It wasn't, a long wait to have children.
All right. So, what's one funny thing that you did when you had your first? What that everybody knew? Okay, this is a first-time dad.
Funny. Well, luckily I had a wonderful wife who really I didn't know how to change diapers, and I have a really weak stomach. I have a really weak stomach. I have a really weak stomach, and I hated changing diapers. I think one of the, I know I changed many diapers really wrong, and I did not and I remember several times the mom would say, "Honey, she still smells bad." There was little things like that. I love to. I mean, I played with her and everything, but I'd probably play sometimes too rough. Things as they got older, I'd try to scare her. She was
there are
like
laws against that now.
I know, but when she was 1 or 2, I'd try to boo and scare her. That was horrible. They still joke with me about that kind of stuff at times. So, what about you?
We had lived in a little tiny house, and I bought everything. We didn't have any money, but I bought everything, and I bought a Radio Flyer red wagon. Well, our house wasn't big enough but I put her in it, and all we could do was back it up and forth. And she was born in November, and I hung lights. I got up on the roof and put lights on the house for Christmas because I was ready to celebrate.
Yeah, I get that. I get it. Yeah,
Now-
we spoiled our kids with all kinds of fun stuff like that.
When
That's-
Anna came along, our second, bless her heart, she's like me as far as she's a little bit off the center of the road, but Cindy was still teaching, so I would have to get the kids ready, which meant I cooked breakfast. Now I had two
oh my God.
to cook, and I'd take her to Mother's Day out a couple days a week, and I'd see all these girls walk in with these bows in their hair,
And
I'd have the wrong shoe on the match, and the other Mother's Day would kind of, hey, let me fix that.
Okay. No, that's good.
Hi, Dusty. This is Dave Clark's daughter, Anna. I am going to answer questions 1 and 4 about my dad. 3 things that I would say about my dad is that he is generous, he is humorous, and he's oblivious. And the most proud that I have ever been of my dad is when I don't think of the joke and he does. Bonus answer, when we both think of the joke and he lets me make it. I'm really proud of his choices then. Okay, bye.
That is Dave Clark right there.
That's a plus, right?
It's a great thing.
All right.
I will say that is one difference too. That is so funny between the first child and the fourth child. The first child on Sunday morning, they are dressed to the hilt for church. As you get more children, I thought about this the other day. I thought, gosh, there was times that I don't know how our boys would just look like ragamuffins come to church, and the girls, there goes the bows. The bows are gone. Everything is just, get ready. We're late. Get ready.
Get the car.
Yeah, that's exactly
now,
right.
Allison, when she was born, like I said, we'd waited so long, and because I'm a writer, I worked a lot of hours, but I could control.
Yeah.
So I just decided we had both sets of parents live nearby, so one would keep them 2 days a week, one would keep her the other 2. Yeah. And then the 5th day of the week was Daddy Day.
Oh, I love that.
So from the time Allison could talk, I'd say, so what do you want to do for Daddy Day this week? Well, sometimes it was the park, sometimes it was Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
And so when we found out we were expecting our second one, I said to Allison, looks like we're going to have 2 on Daddy Day. And she didn't hesitate at all. She said, no, you'll have 2 Daddy Days.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
and it wasn't, she wasn't being, she was right. She wasn't willing to give up that day that we had.
Which I love that.
And so we had 2 Daddy Days.
Gosh, I love that.
And I'm grateful for those.
There's things like that. I didn't have 4 Daddy Days, but I did try to always make sure I took each kid out for a special time. Like I remember that I would always say, Stephanie's day's your day, or a couple of weeks later, Sheree, this is your day. And I'd do things like staying with Christian and Donovan. Hey, this is your day. So yeah, you do that. That makes it special, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Because I didn't have that.
Now, when I've heard my dad, I told you he didn't have much of a father figure in his life, but like he built our house, so I finally go, where did you learn to build a house?
Yeah.
You didn't have any money, you didn't have a dad, and he always talked about my mom's brothers. She came from a big farm family, and they filled that role for him.
Wow.
And so I look at you and I go, okay, well, who was who was that father
up
figure?
until I was 14, I didn't have a lot. I didn't have, my mom she married several times through that time, and I wish I could say they were good memories, but they weren't. They just stepfather after stepfather, abuse after abuse. But when I got saved, the husband and wife that led me to the Lord, Keith and Sharon Johns, they're still alive in Twin Falls, Idaho. I was 14, and they were probably in their early 30s, and they had 2 children of themselves, and their kids probably were 8, 6 maybe. but they took such an interest in me, and Keith would come and pick me up on Saturdays and take me to help in his yard.
Wow.
Or they would come and pick me up on Wednesday night for church. They never once did they treat me any differently than their own kid. They paid my way to camp.
Wow.
I remember he had a mom and dad. His mom and dad, they lived in a farm, and they would do crops. And he said, "Do you want to make some money?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm gonna go out there and help my dad. Do you want to come out with me?" It was little things like that. And then, as going in church, there was a man by the name of Carol Magruder, and he was a singer. But him and his first wife, she got killed in a car accident before he married Priscilla. They were in Twin Falls, and they were my pastors, and at the church where I got saved. And Carol, I mean, I look at these men, Carol and a man by the name of Leon Suggett. There was a few men that they took such an interest in me that, as far as, we need to show him how to dress a little bit. He'd come in, I smelled like cigarette smoke because I was always at home. I mean, there's things you just did. I didn't know how to wear deodorant. I mean, you learn. I mean, and I remember Carol Magruder said, "I'm going to show you how to tie a tie." And he didn't just show me how to tie a tie. He said, "I went and bought you these 3 ties for church." Just little things. I remember, even until I was 19, 20, I never had a car. We walked everywhere. My mom didn't have a car. And I remember he said, I got a really good job at Sears. And I was a junior manager. And he said, you need a car. He said, "I'm going to take you down to the dealership and I'm going to sign for you a car."
Wow.
And I bought a brand new car, and I had men like that. There was a few of them that just really, really helped me. And I would watch them and their families. And that really helped a lot. And when I went to work for the Rambos, I watched Buck Rambo and how he treated Reba and different little things. You saw different. I was really fortunate to have some men in my life that really believed in me and that still do.
3 things I would say about my dad. First is that he has such a love for music. I always remember growing up, I always had music playing in the house, whether we're cleaning or in the car. Just always had music going, And then second thing is that he has always had a good sense of style and fashion, which I think he obviously passed down to a couple of his kids, which is nice. And the third thing is that he is always faithful, and he's always looking at the bright side and staying positive no matter what situation's thrown his way. The worst outfit that I ever saw him wear. Kind of hard, but it's probably an old picture from the 70s, but something like that. But apparently that was in style back then, so they say. And also, sometimes growing up, I just remember he would tuck in his T-shirts. I don't know, not the best look. Most proud thing is probably just how he's such an amazing dad, even though he didn't really have a dad growing up, and he's just so passionate about everything he does, and he has this ability to connect with anybody and everybody, and just makes me very proud to call him my dad. Love you, Dad.
So you used to tuck your T-shirts in.
They have given me. I did. I found several pictures the other day. I did tuck my T-shirts in. I don't know why. Always.
And, we don't know what these answers are going to be, but the things that he pulled out that he's proudest of are all the things you listed earlier that you didn't have.
I'm so glad.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's very sweet.
We have a dear friend that he grew up without any father figure in his life, and whenever he hears us tell a story about that, he called a couple weeks ago and he said, "Hey, I'm so fascinated with generational stories."
Yeah.
He said, would you guys come over to dinner and just tell stories about, and you go, I can't even begin. Our kids have been surrounded as far as they can reach on either side with godly influences.
And I think even on our Mother's Day episode when we were talking with Levon and Cindy, our precious wives, who are everything to us, and they make us so much better than we are. You know, Levon,
look like
they
good
do,
fathers.
they do, they really do. We owe so much to them. But Levon had this incredible family, and her dad and her brothers, and because I've often thought, God, what did they see? But they never once made me feel like I was bad. I was this horrible person because I grew up without a father, and I drank in a lot of the wisdom from her dad. I'd watch her dad and how he worked hard. They had 7 kids, and how he took care of his wife and those kids. And up until they passed away a couple of years ago, both of Levon's parents passed away right during the COVID time. We would go home to Washington to Levon's families, and I tell this all the time. People say, "No, you did." Yeah, we did. 7 kids. All of their spouses, all of the grandkids would get in a 3-bedroom house with 2.5 baths, and I can stand before God, there was never any drama. We would all just stay the night. If you got to feeling, if they knew if I needed my time, I'd probably just go out to the somewhere and sit, and they just.
You're a better man than I am. I'll just say that.
None of us stayed in hotels.
Yeah.
We'd all just stay together. We're not talking for 2 nights. We're talking 4, 5, 6 nights.
Nope, can't do it.
And
So,
it worked.
I applaud
you
that.
know. And Levon to this day, and my girls, they love that. When we'll go down to Stephanie's, and it's all 4 kids, the spouses, the 3 dogs, the 6 grandkids, all in Stephanie's 3-bedroom house.
So, Dusty, this has been fun tonight, and just hearing your kids talk about you for what you inherited, but you've done it well.
Well, hearing what your kids talked about, we've been both very blessed, and we come from different lives.
And you know what? For our listeners, you've kind of got to listen in to our stories tonight, but. If you don't have your father here, I pray that this Father's Day you're reminded of the best of whatever that relationship was.
And you make the best of that relationship. I think that's the thing, and I don't know how I learned that. I was sitting here and I thought, how did I? Because I've never been bitter or jaded about my father. I can honestly state that I've never. There's hurt at times. You'll see something. But I've always said you make the best of because
you've done it.
Those people are products of how they came,
So to our listeners, happy Father's Day, and we
love to tell the stories. But we're both big crybabies right now.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes.